Welcome back to Bubbly and Blazers, the space where ambition meets authenticity. I'm Shayla, your host, and today it's just you and me. I wanted to have a real kind of cozy chat about something we all go through, but don't always talk about openly, and that's transitions. Those in between spaces where one thing's ending and another is beginning. Maybe you're starting a new job, moving cities, stepping into or out of a relationship, or even just shifting the way you see yourself. Transitions can feel exciting, but they can also feel really messy and sometimes a little lonely. So grab your bubbly and let's get into it. Yeah, like I mentioned, I think what it was is the weather, honestly, is inspiring me for today's episode. We're at the end of August, we're coming into fall. Dare I say it? I said it. And I think the fall for a lot of us is a really big transition, from such a young age. Think of September almost as like a new year for a lot of people. We go to get our back to school supplies, maybe a fresh outfit, and even just start thinking about what projects or ambitions you have for the new year. I know for me personally, I still love going to get new pens and notepads in September. There's just something so cozy about that. And I often find I do set a lot of my goals kind of this time of year. So I thought it'd be a really important topic for today. Um, and I also, for those listening, and welcome new listeners, I've also gone through a lot of transitions myself in the last few years, and I've shared some of them on this podcast, but today I really wanted to show up a little bit more authentically and raw, and share with you kind of some pretty major transitions that I've gone through the last few years. And, through that, I feel like I've gotten to a place where I feel really grounded and really just obsessed with my life. And I wanted to kind of share some things that helped me get here. So maybe I'll start by going back to the beginning of how I've gotten here and kind of the three big transitions that I've gone through over the last few years. So, one, I stepped away from a very long term relationship. Um, that was messy and chaotic in of itself, in the sense that we were together at such a young age and through a lot of very pivotal moments, I'd say, when you're kind of growing up and finding who you are, that it was interesting, through the separation and after the separation, really trying to find who I was as a person and realizing how kind of dependent we became on one another for, basic things to very, deep things, values, missions, morals, life plans, all of those things that I kind of felt like I had to rediscover or even just discover for the first time in myself. Um, and then, of course, that transition of going from in a relationship to dating. I don't think anyone could have ever prepared me for that one. You guys have heard some of my date stories, but yeah, let's just say it was quite a shock. Um, so that was definitely one big moment. And I think from that, it really cascaded into a lot of other aspects of my life, deciding if what I was doing as a career was what I wanted to do long term, deciding if where I was living was where I wanted to be long term. All these things that then started to question in my mind and cause other shifts to happen. So after that, started to really question what I wanted for myself, what I was working towards, what I was building. It ended up in a path where I decided to step away from the job that I had and start my own, which um, at the time, I honestly, if you had asked me 4 years ago if I'd ever own my own business, I'd probably tell you absolutely not. There's no way. Maybe even if you had asked me 2 years ago, even make it more relevant, I'd say no. And here I am, having left a job and started my own business. Um, and yeah, I again, the job I was working in, I loved. I loved aspects of my role. I loved the people I worked with. I loved my coworkers. I built so many incredible connections in the community. Um, there were so many opportunities given to me that I am forever grateful for. But I realized again, it wasn't something that I saw myself doing long term. And that was a really hard transition. I'd say equally hard to stepping away from the relationship. Um, and maybe almost harder in the sense that when I was going through that separation, my career was what I had to lean on. It was a pillar that was, comfortable, stable. And at the time, I did see myself being there long term. So going through that transition of then having that change when I was still figuring out how to be in a relationship with myself was so difficult and took so much out of me. Um, and I'll get into what helped me navigate through that. But honestly, the people around me, my kind of core group of friends and family and core people in my network are the ones that I really helped lean on throughout that transition. And there were times when I questioned it. There are times where I thought, what am I doing? There was a lot of people that I thought would be there to support me that weren't. And there was a lot of moments of kind of disappointment and realizing all this time and energy and value that I put into this and into these moments. As soon as I stepped away, I did lose some of those. And that was a hard part of it as well, is, living with the loss, but then realizing like, okay, it's going to get better and you need to hold to this and you need to stay to this. And there's still moments where I feel sad about some of the things that I've lost through it, but I also know that I'm in such a place where um I feel truly, truly happy. And if I didn't have those losses, I wouldn't be here. So that was a really big one. And while I was navigating that, I also started questioning, if where I was living was going to allow me this growth. And even though I loved the city I was in, again, I loved the relationships I had, that I volunteered quite a bit. And so the connections I had and the things I was a part of, I didn't want to change. But at the same time, I really started thinking long term and that, there's places I want to live, there's experiences I want to have. And if I stayed where I was, I knew those wouldn't happen. And when I started really reflecting on that, I realized, you know what, now's the time to do it. I can always come back. Um, and yeah, so I decided to uproot my life, pack it all into my little car and a moving van and make the move at the same time as I was switching careers. Would I recommend that to anyone moving forward? Absolutely not. It was a bit of an eat, pray, love moment. If you have not seen the movie, please watch it. I feel like honestly, maybe inspiration for all of this. But yeah, like I said, looking back, I would not change a thing. But looking forward or talking to other people, I don't know if I'd recommend starting a business at the same time that you move cities. So that's kind of a little like taste of what I've gone through. And I share that with you for anyone that, is going through any one of those transitions to let you know that, I've been there, I can empathize with you, you're going through it, and to know that these things happen. And I think again, more often than not than we discuss, obviously with close friends and family, maybe those are things you talk about openly. But it's things too in people's career that they're not always as open and vulnerable to share. And I think that's where we can think, we look at someone who's so successful and at everything we want, but we don't see the things they had to lose to get there. We don't see the difficult decisions that they had to make. And sure, maybe they'll highlight one or two on their LinkedIn about, the pivots they made and these kind of transitions. But it's never the true raw experience. And so I want you to know that if you're going through this, it's okay, and that this happens, and that we do go through these moments. We go through these, kind of peaks and valleys in life, and that's part of it. So stay with it. And I really want to focus today's episode on sharing kind of what helped me get through these. Um, so I think the first thing I want to really touch on is that I had to become honest with myself. And that's hard. That takes a lot of work. That takes a lot of time. That's not something that you can just do overnight. And for me, again, in each of these transitions, it looked different. For some, they overlapped, but it was really about asking myself those difficult questions, sitting with them, meditating on them, letting them ruminate in my head until it came to answers that I felt so concrete and solid about that I was like, okay, a change has to be made. And I think that's also the key here that I want you to hold on to, is that you have to be honest with yourself, but you also then have to get to a point where you believe so wholeheartedly in the decision that you're going to make that if people start to question it or wonder why, that you don't feel like you necessarily have to explain yourself. You certainly can, but you just know deep down that that's the way you want to go, and that's the decision you're going to make. Because I will say, through all this, there were people that surprised me in not supporting what I was doing. There's relationships that I lost along the way because of the decisions I made. And there's some that I still look back and feel, a bit sad that that was the outcome of it. But I know that if this is the person that I want to be, that perhaps they weren't as close of a relationship as I thought I had. So, how to become honest with yourself? Honestly, for me, it was a lot of journaling. And whether you journal by voice note, whether you journal by writing, whether your version of journaling is just kind of having conversations with yourself, it really is about asking those deep questions and taking the time to think about it. So some that I think would be a good way to start if you're going through a transition period, or maybe things just don't feel, you're just, not happy with where things are at. Some ways that you can become a little bit more honest with yourself and get into those deeper thoughts and deeper feelings. Some things is, what transition are you in? Or what's a transition you're resisting right now? What's one thing you're letting go of this season? I really like this one, especially like I said, as we're transitioning from seasons, quite literally. A good prompt for you. Yeah, what's one thing you're letting go of this season? What's one thing you're leaning into? That's a really good one. How has your routine shifted, intentionally or not? And this was another one that was kind of eye-opening to me when I really started to look at my day to day. Was there were some shifts that were happening that I wasn't really aware of. Sure, I was taking on opportunities. Sure, I was saying yes to, different roles in my job. Sure, I was saying yes to these social situations and things, but there all of a sudden was a shift that when I looked at what was happening day to day and where I was like, whoa, wait a second. When did all this happen? So I really like that. And, that can be as simple as even writing out your day to day, your week to week, your month to month, looking what's coming up and being like, will this make me happy? Is this what I'm working towards? Is this lining up with the goals and ambitions I have? And you might be surprised at some of the things that aren't, that just kind of somehow slid into your calendar, or, slid into your DMs. And here we are. So being honest with yourself about what that looks like, I think is really key in navigating where you are right now and knowing where you want to go. I think also, end of August, we're going into September. It's a nice time to kind of look back to our goals that we set earlier this year. Are you still aligned? Have some pivoted? Or is this a moment to kind of shift and pivot and go back to what those were? So, in asking yourself these questions, though, try not to overthink the answers. Sometimes, I think more often than not, actually, your first gut reaction is the most honest one. And if there's aspects that you're feeling like, ooh, actually, no, I don't love that or this, that's okay. Write it down, think about it more, and really come to understand why is it that you're feeling this way about it. So become honest with yourself. Number one, absolutely number one. Until you're honest with yourself, you can't show up authentically. Number two, focus on little routines. So this was huge for me. And, like I said, I thrive on routine to begin with. But I really think whether you do or not, routine is helpful in helping you feel grounded. So for me, what that looked like, and, again, I love my routine, but it was so simple. My routine during this time where I just felt so lost and so not myself yet was make my bed, brush my teeth, journal, make time for movement, and have dinner. That was my routine. And if I hit 3 out of those 5, I felt proud of myself in a day. And that period went on for quite a long time. So again, if you're feeling stuck in kind of the weeds and you're not sure, left from right at the moment, bring it back down to, I'd say, 3 to 5 simple things that you can accomplish every day. Giving yourself that stability, that balance in life, and kind of checking off those little things will slowly start to help you feel in a better space to be able to make those moves, those changes, and come to those decisions. Next thing that was key in all this is find friends who I could lean on and reach out to people in my network that inspired me. I cannot tell you how integral this part of it was. And I mean relationships in any aspect. Like I said, you have to look to your friends, and like by friends, like core friends, ones that will give you their honest opinions, one that will listen to your same story over and over, the ones that will help you look at things from a different perspective, the ones that truly are there to support you, those friends. And you'll find out pretty quickly when you go through some of these changes who those people are and who maybe are the people that might stay on the outside or might stay as acquaintances. But finding those core people is huge. And as you go through transitions, know that these people are going to change too. I have some incredible friends that have been with me through so much in my life and have stayed there and been there. And I honestly probably wouldn't be here if they weren't through those. But I've also had friends that have come in at different transition points in my life who have helped me get through that next phase of growth, who have helped me kind of navigate that next part. And like I said, I've also lost friends. And not in the sense of, we never speak again or there's a huge blowout, but they've just shifted as to how they show up and who they are. I also really took the time to lean into my network. And again, this is a bit more personal to my story in that there was a career shift involved here. But I think it's also a good part in any transition is the people that were in my network, and I say network being like more professional relationships. Um, those were the people that really inspired me to figure out what was next. And it really started with a text or phone call being like, "Hey, I'm going through a transition. I just stepped away from my job. Do you have time to chat? I'm kind of throwing out some ideas what I might do next, and I'd love your opinion." Literally is how I started my business. I reached out to someone that was in part of my business group who I had known for a couple years now at this point. And yeah, I had just finished up my last day and I was looking for, kind of had the reality shock of like, oh God, what's next? For someone who makes a plan, I had no plan. And I sent him a message and I was like, hey, I'm going through a transition. I'd love to chat. Do you have time for a phone call? picked up the phone. I told him a couple ideas I had, which involved traveling overseas and maybe doing some little side work. And he literally said to me, he said, "Would you be happy doing that?" And I said, "Not, I don't think so, actually. I don't know that that's me." And he goes, "Okay, because I think you have potential for so much more." And then we ended up having like a 30-minute conversation that truly led to me starting my own business the next week. So again, lean into those people. Even if they're loose touch points, you never know the conversations that can happen, and you never know what transitions other people have gotten to get to where they are and how they might be related to you at that time. So find the people that inspire you, find the people that are successful or where you want to get to, reach out to them, have a coffee, have a phone call, talk to them and let them help guide you as well. The other part of that is, you know, knowing again that you will make relationships that maybe aren't as helpful. I know for me, again, going back to kind of more personal, through some of this, I talked about, stepping away from a long-term relationship, well, enter in dating scene and, when all aspects of your life are a little unstable, you're like, okay, which one can I lock down? Which can I create stability in so that I can then focus on the others? And my God, I thought, a relationship. Yep. Okay. Find a person. Maybe they can help, lean on them. Again, going back to that kind of codependency after leaving a long term relationship. Yeah. There's people you'll meet along the way that might try and veer you away from where you want to go, or, maybe serve as reminders as to where you don't want to get to. And, yes, I've had quite a few bad dates in between all of this. And were they helpful in getting me to where I want to go? No. But at the same time, I always think every opportunity is an opportunity to learn. And I would say that a lot of those have helped me get to this more stable spot and help me get to know where I want to be. So, if you have a little bit of fun in between, absolutely. But again, stay true to those core relationships and those core people that really are, invested in you and invested in your long term potential too. Next piece to this is look at the bigger picture. And this is one I talk to my friends about all the time. Again, for me, a very key moment in knowing where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do is taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture. So it was actually my therapist at the time who gave me this worksheet, and basically it was, create a journal 10 years from, or yeah, write a journal entry about a day 10 years from today. And at first, I looked at the page, I closed my book and I walked away because I was like, I don't even know what I'm going to eat for lunch today, let alone 10 years from today. And, I had so much go on that thinking about a future was scary. It was daunting. I had no idea. So I probably let this prompt sit for, I'm going to say like 8 months. Seems about right, 6 to 8 months before I actually sat down and did it. And you know what's funny in all this? So I talk about friendships. One of my closest friends was also going through quite a transition period at the same time. And we really kind of like connected on a deeper level because we went through this together. And one of our spontaneous things was we went away to Little Mountain town for a weekend, and I had told her, I I was like, look, like I've been sitting on this prompt and been wanting to do this exercise. I haven't been able to do it. I was like, let's do it. Let's do it together. We're in the middle of nowhere. We barely have service. Instead of just like thinking about like all the sad things, let's take this moment and like let's be strong, independent women and figure this shit out. Sorry. And yeah, so that honestly was such a key moment as well and has been so integral to this whole piece of it. So, what ended up happening is, yeah, we did this exercise together and it was so fun and so interesting to do because both of us picked very different days. Both of us wrote out very different outcomes, but there was also so much similarity. And it was really nice to have someone to support you while you were doing that and be able to share too. So, yeah, what we did is we picked a day. Mine was like a random Saturday morning, because I just love like a slow Saturday morning with coffee. I wrote out, and again, like I looked at the blank page, her and I both, and we were like, where do we start? And it was amazing when you pick a day, like say a Saturday morning, and you just begin writing, like, I woke up and then I went down the stairs and then I did this and then this. All of a sudden, when you allow yourself to kind of write some things down, it's incredible the things that your mind puts out. And like I said, this was something that I had been kind of, meditating on for the last like 6 to 8 months. So that's part of it too. And we go back to those transition questions that I posed about getting honest with yourself. It's okay if you don't know the answer right away. It's okay if you close your book or throw it away. It's okay if you write that prompt out 6 times and never write something on a page, because one day when you actually go to look at it, you will know. And it'll just all of a sudden come pouring out and you won't be able to stop. And that's the point that I got to in all this is once I started to look at what that 10-year picture was, it was incredible what started coming out. The things I was writing about, the aspirations I had that maybe I didn't really know, but I kind of like had whispers of. And yeah, I've probably written this day out 3 or 4 times now. Every time is very similar. There's some little differences, of course, but it's been such an incredible way to stay rooted and to know what I'm working towards. Whether it all comes true, that's another story. Like I said, there's been slightly different renditions, and I'm sure it'll change as time goes on. But at the same time, there's enough concrete things that I want in that it's really helped me when I need to make those difficult decisions or when I'm going through the messy part of a transition, that I hold true to what I want and know that this is just a moment, this is just a blip, this is just a glimmer, that it will come together. And so I think being able to step back, look at the bigger picture, map it out, write it down has been really important, and to be able to go through these transitions, because if you've been there, you know how messy they can get. You know how sad you can feel at your lowest. You know how, anger, frustration, stress, anxiety, all those feelings are so real and so intense and come at the most random moments that if you don't have something that can truly bring you back to that, sense of self and sense of direction, it can be really difficult. And that's coming from someone who went through that period without knowing what was going to happen, where I was going. And I think that really is what made those difficult days even harder, is that I was just in the moment. And yes, you have to go through that. You have to go through that transition period to let yourself feel all of the feelings. But as you start to come out of it, it's looking ahead to, okay, let's take a moment, let's take a step back. What do I want to happen? Writing that out. Again, looking at who you want to become, what you're looking to build, and looking ahead to what you want in that. And then, another piece to this, second to last, is celebrate the small wins. So this again is huge. And I'd encourage anyone to, like, who's going through these periods, write them down, because it's so interesting. Like I'm big in journaling. I love writing. And so I write down little things, and it's incredible to look back on some of my journals from when I was going through this period. I had written down, like, made dinner 5 days in a row, which doesn't seem like a big deal now, but then it was huge. And so it's really incredible to look not only in the moment when you're writing those things down, like you can feel a sense of pride in yourself. Like, okay, maybe I don't know what I want in life, but hey, I made dinner for myself 5 days in a row. Like, look at me go. I'm doing great. And you truly are. You truly are. But taking moment to celebrate those little things. Like I showed up today. I provided for myself. I nourished my body. Like, look at that. That's huge. And then, another thing I had written down, like talked on the phone with my grandma, went on a spontaneous girls trip to the mountains. Look how key that little win at the time was. And like I said, I really that has shaped me to be where I am now. So celebrate the small wins along the way, because I think those are what also help us get through those tough days, those difficult times, is reflecting on what we're grateful for, but also reflecting on the things that we're proud of ourselves for. It can be little things too, like, I made the bed today, or I showered today. I got out of bed today. I went to the grocery store. Those little things really are key during this time when you've got so much going on. And that leads to my last point is be kind to yourself. I think that is, if you take one thing away, let it be that one. When you're going through these transitions, be kind to yourself and be patient. You're going through a lot. Your mind is thinking about a lot. Your body physically is going through so much with all the added stress, anxiety, challenges. Be kind. Talk kindly to yourself. And again, like if you're writing down those small wins, reflect on those. Don't think about, you know, oh, these were some of my thoughts at the time. Oh my gosh, like look at this person. They're training for this marathon, they're running every day. I should be doing that. Why am I not? Meanwhile, like some mornings I barely want to get out of bed. So be kind to yourself and knowing that, okay, maybe one day you'll get there. If that's truly what you want, one day you'll get there. But right now, you're not there. And right now, you need to be here. You need to be there for yourself. Adding more pressure is not going to make the situation better. Being mean to yourself is not going to result in any positive change. So let's just be here right now with where we are and who we are. Be kind to that and know that this kindness will soon turn into something so much grander. And I think that for me, going through all these transitions, something that I really was searching for was not only to be happy, but also to really love who I was. And I can honestly tell you that when before all these changes happened, I didn't love who I was. Maybe outwardly I showed it. Maybe, there's moments where I was telling myself I did, but I didn't. And I wasn't happy. And now I feel like in a space where I'm just obsessed. I'm obsessed with the life I've created. I'm obsessed with where things are at. And, I actually love the relationship I've developed with myself. And I know that there are more things coming. There's more changes. There's more pivots. There's more transitions in life. This is only the start, but I know that where I am now is because of all of the things that have led me here. And I'm so grateful for that. And I'm so grateful to be able to have a platform to be able to share that with other people going through similar transitions. And I hope that some of these tips will help you as you navigate yours. So before we wrap up, let's go through our quick bubbly breakdown, the highlights for you to sip on from today's episodes. So remember that transitions can feel uncomfortable because they come without certainty. They come with uncertainty, you could say, but they're proof you're growing. Check in with yourself. What are you letting go of and what are you leaning into? Anchor yourself with small routines, give yourself permission to pivot, and lean on the community and people that support your growth. And then celebrate the tiny wins because every step forward counts. So, those are your takeaway toolkit for navigating transitions with a little more grace and a lot more confidence. So, whether you're stepping into something brand new, closing a chapter, or just hanging out in the messy middle, you're not alone. Every transition is shaping you into the next version of yourself, and that's something worth toasting to. So, if you found value in today's episode, please share it with a friend who's going through their own transition series, or connect with us on Instagram and let's keep this conversation going. All right, friends, until next time, keep your bubbly chilled, your blazer fierce, and your heart open to what's next. Cheers.